welcome to another installment of the Fragments of Silicon reviews. 4 reviews up this week. The first of which is Dodo. Tough as nails and no continues. Do you have what it takes? Dodo is a light-hearted arcade game, reminiscent of beloved classics from the early 80s that we still cherish to this very day. You play as Baker Billy Burns, who has to run, jump, and climb to outwit Dodo and his bunch of clueless minions. Your goal is to collect all the donuts in each level in the best possible time. Will you take the high score table today? Come and join the fun. It is 1983, only better. So yeah, Dodo here is not actually an arcade game. I want to clarify that. At least as far as I know, it doesn't have an arcade version. You know, it just plays like an arcade game from about this point 40 years ago, or does it? I would contend not really. Like, it's got the presentation of a game from 1983, but it's got the play control of something from, I'd say, a few years later. That's actually a good thing. If you want to name the clearest influences on this game, you got, Burger Time and Donkey Kong, stuff like that. Here's the thing, even the arcade versions of those games were pretty stiff. And you look at the Baker here. He moves really tightly. It's one of those things that you wouldn't pick up on necessarily unless you're familiar with old arcade games or games from this time. And, I don't know if you've noticed, but we've reviewed some of these games on the channel. Not Donkey Kong or Popeye or, classic arcade games. But we've covered a lot of old-ass computer games that followed in their footsteps, and Freaky does not begin to describe how those feel. That's kind of what I'm getting across here. The play control here is, at the very best, it would have been the arcade version, because, even something on the NES, once again, you're probably not getting something that smooth, until a little ways in. Post Super Mario Brothers for most, because, if you look at Nintendo's pre-Super Mario Brothers output, you still have things like Ice Climbers, Wrecking Crew, and so on and so forth that play pretty clunkily.
Mm-hmm. Also, this game has way too many frames of animation for that era.
I was going to get to that.
I'm
like, that's the other tip-off. It's like, there is way too much fluid animation here. At least, once again, in the Baker and probably the Dodo, the enemies, maybe the mouse thing, like the toilet snake, that definitely seems to have the amount of animation you would expect from an arcade game or what have you from the early 80s.
But yeah, this is I don't know, maybe late Genesis / Super Nintendo level of animation here?
Maybe. And also the precision in the control. Because you can do things like, you can adjust your jump and guide it in ways that the old school arcade games just didn't allow you to do, either by constraint or design. So, and in other areas, it does get the presentation right. right down to, it's got the black background, single screen, all stuff you would have expected from that era. But some of the little details are off, but I'm going to say they're off in good ways. Like, oh no, better play control, the horror. No, I'm not going to say that. Especially since, it is not 1983 anymore. You don't have to play by its rules.
Gasp.
Yeah. I do think where this game went, it's like, how do I put this? The biggest mistake was not including anything defensive. Once again, Donkey Kong Jr., Burger Time, all of those had ways of taking out or stunning for a measure of time. The minions, if you will. There's no way to do that here. You can only jump. It's a purely defensive game, and no, I don't think that was a good idea. Especially because of that fucking toilet stink. You can't jump over him. So sometimes you will just be stuck and consigned to a death. That was bad. You should fix that, game designers. But otherwise, yeah, this is a pretty good homage to classic gaming. Right down to the nonsensical premise. Because, you have a Dodo who, for whatever reason, really likes donuts. And has somehow stolen them.
I've seen worse.
Like, yeah. Like, this game doesn't really make much sense, even in the context of itself. Like, once again, Donkey Kong, that, all the girders and stuff, they were supposed to be a construction site. That's why Mario was a carpenter, or, Jumpman, as he was known then. Here, nothing here looks like a bakery. This is just pure abstraction, for the most part. Or, the third level, it's a Ferris wheel. It's about the closest thing to an on-brand internal thing that they got going here. Because, okay, you can get, like, donuts and shit at the carnival. Like, I'm not even sure what this level is supposed to be.
This one?
Yeah, is it supposed to be a ship?
I think it said construction yard.
It's possible.
It's like,
but
they
once
have
again,
names of
why
the
are we on
levels, but yeah.
Why are we on a construction yard? That's not thematically consistent. But once again, it's kind of a minor point. And yeah, the goal here is to grab donuts, the small donuts. Getting the large one before it glows is not going to do anything. You'll die. Also, getting the glowing donut is 175 points versus the 25 points of a regular donut. And I'd imagine there are optimal routes. The fastest amount of time you can get to the donuts. But the thing is, as far as I'm not 100% sure on this, but I do think that the donuts colorization is random. So you can't quite eke out a perfect stratagem.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, there are 5 screens, and the levels go up. You'll get a loop, but unlike classic arcade games, there is a purpose to the looping. In the sense that after the second loop, at least on the first 2 difficulties, I suppose, you will beat the game. Yeah, this game does have a end screen, which, once again, is going against the classic golden age of arcade design, because it's like even Donkey Kong Jr., the games that pioneered arcade storytelling, still after it was complete, you just loop back and it just got more difficult and more difficult until you could trudge on no more.
Or the game ran out of memory and just sent you to a kill screen.
Right. Here there is a finite, definitive end. You just have to work around the second loop around. Actually achieving that is going to be more difficult than you might envision, because this definitely does pack the old school difficulty. And another thing I want to mention is the music, because I think the music is the most out of place thing in this game. Once again, the music sounds like stuff that was coming out of mid to late era NES games, especially that second level theme. That just reminds me of something that I would have heard on the NES in 1989. Like, overall point here is, yeah, we did have like chiptune music at this point, but nothing that went this hard, as the kids say. It's not bad. It's just a bit of a mismatch. Though I don't think there's going to be too many complainers there. Because, once again, we are talking about the era of, music was optional. And as far as the stages themselves, they're mostly designed fairly competently. I think my least favorite is the Dodo's Lair, strictly because of the doors. That one has the added trick of you've got to go through doors and they'll lead you to different sections of the level, and I didn't find that bit particularly fun, especially since the toilet snake returns in all of its non-stunnable glory. But yeah, and I think that's about it in terms of the base mechanics and such here. Now, does it come together, foibles aside? And the answer is yes, very yes. I will say, unless you're competitive or obsessed about a high score or something like this is the kind of game you're not going to play for very long. I mean, it's kind of designed that way.
Well, it also does have like a weekly online score mode if you're really into that.
Right. Once again, like, this isn't a proper arcade game, but it's done in the spirit of one. And remember, arcade games were short score attack affairs designed to eat your quarters. So, in that sense of perspective, this game definitely would have fit in very well during the Golden Age. Oh, maybe even the Silver Age. It's hard to say. It's just a really solid package. It's just once again, like, we've talked about these kind of games before. Really good games that are good for short play sessions. Like, now, as I understand it, this did get a Nintendo Switch port not too long ago. And yeah, either this or a Steam Deck, that's probably the optimal way to play this. as opposed to, sitting in front of a console or computer. It's a very pick up and play game, and definitely the kind of thing I would play waiting for the bus, in the doctor's waiting room. Insert scenario where you need to kill a few minutes. It's very, very good at what it does. It's just, it doesn't have all that much in the way of staying power, but it's not designed to. And that does factor into the price here, because Donut Dodo clocks in at a mere $5, $4.99, which is the perfect kind of price to pay for something like this in these days. Just keep in mind, if this did come out in 1983, the home ports that would have shown up, a year, maybe even 2 years later, would have been severely compromised and cost like $30, $40 in 1980s money.
Yeah, so about full price retail now.
Yeah, I'm like, unless we were talking about a very specific subset of the retail scene, and that is the UK cassette. That's where games went for like £5-6 quid. Mm-hmm. Pounds, if you will. But we're not talking about one of those this week.
We'll get to that fresh hell at some point.
I mean, whenever another Pixel Games UK thing shows up.
Yep.
But my point is, this is the kind of thing that would have been beloved in the early 80s. And, it's like, even if it saw a port to the NES, it still would have been fairly, probably closer. But, you wouldn't have all the frames of animation. Maybe one of the levels would have been cut, that kind of thing.
Controls would be nowhere near as fluid.
Yeah. And you'd still happily pay for it because, it's 1984. And we're still in the era of, the arcade is the forefront of video games, and everything else is just kind of following along for the most part. Once again, there are exceptions, but that's basically how the industry worked until the mid to late 90s. Anyway, Petty, do you have anything to add to the proceedings?
Not really.
Okay, then. So, yeah, that'll about do it for Donut Dodo here. Be sure to tune in after the break, as Petty will be covering 4th Generation Warfare.